up, everybody? Welcome back to Couple Things
with Shawn and Andrew,
a podcast all about couples
and the things they go through.
Okay, so today might not be specifically about couples, but hopefully by now we have returned home from the hospital. We have little man on our lap. We have Drew by our side, and we are sitting watching the Olympics.
That's right. So we're going to tie it into the Couple Things mantra by saying that, you know what, training for elite sports does put a strain not only on the individual, but also on relationships around it. So we're going to talk about what Shawn's training schedule was like, what her Olympic experience was like, and we're going to be asking questions that you all submitted via Instagram and comments to address some lesser known things about the Olympics.
Yes, you guys had a lot of burning questions. And because Andrew and I were actually supposed to be at the Olympics this year.
Oh, it's a sore subject.
It is, but we got little man instead, which is such a blessing. We thought it would be a perfect opportunity to answer all of your burning questions and talk about the Olympics for a little bit.
Okay, and before we dive into it, if you haven't subscribed to the show or given a rating, first of all, welcome. Glad to have you here. We usually do talk about couples. We interview different couples, everyone from Phil Donahue and Marlo Thomas to Matthew Hussey, the dating coach. But today we are talking Olympics. And we're glad to have you here.
I hate to do this, but if you're new here, if you don't know who we are, the reason why we are talking about the Olympics
is because Shawn is an Olympic gold medalist. Casual flex.
Yeah.
Casual flex.
I competed in the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, China as a gymnast where I won 4 Olympic medals, 1 gold and 3 silver.
Wow, it's a rare day that you talk about that.
I know. It feels weird.
I'm actually excited. A lot of these questions I don't know about.
Great.
I've never thought to ask. So let's dive into it.
Let's do it.
First question, Shawn, is what was your training schedule like throughout your gymnastics career?
So throughout my gymnastics career, my Olympic journey was definitely different and unique because I was a kid. I was 16 years old by the time I made it to the Olympics. And so my training career and my training schedule always had to revolve around elementary school, middle school, high school, and all of those extracurricular activities. So I trained towards the end, like the last probably 5 years, I trained 6 days a week for 4 hours, and it was always after school.
And it's rare in a lot of cases for elite gymnastics that you actually did go to school, correct?
It is rare. So a very, very long story tried to be what?
You're trying to shorten.
There you go.
Long story made short.
There you go. The average elite gymnast trains 9 to 10 hours a day, and they're homeschooled, and they'll actually school at the gym. But for me, I was very lucky to have a coach who was a world champion from China, moved here with the American dream to open his own gym and raise Olympians that were also children that had a life and had like this fine balance because he wasn't capable or able to do that in China.
That's something that Shawn and I have tried to maintain through our relationship and family life is a sense of balance. And I'm glad that you were raised that way. Next question is, Shawn, so the Olympic trials took place in June. Mm-hmm. That's where they announced and chose the Olympic team. What happens between the Olympic trials that were on primetime TV and the actual Olympics a couple weeks later?
So this has changed a little bit, but for me, what happened was we would go to Olympic trials, we would compete, and they would name the team. Along with the team, they would name like 10 alternates. Only 4 of those would end up actually being alternates. And all of us would then fly to a general training facility where we would all be like housed. It was back then the Karoli Ranch. And we would train for 2 weeks. We would go through more competitions, like mock competitions, just to make sure that the selection committee was confident with their selections. At the end of those 2 weeks, they would say, okay, yeah.
Do they ever change it?
Yes.
Whoa, what?
Yes.
That's
crazy. The sketchy part back then. They don't do
Dang.
that anymore. But they would do these trials and they would name a quote unquote team, but they would change it up. So you would go to this camp, you would train for 2 more weeks and do mock competitions. At the end of the 2 weeks, they would name the final team that traveled and we would fly to the Olympics. By the time we land at the Olympics, we still have a good 2 or 3 weeks before we compete. And that amount of time is just spent getting used to kind of your environment and the new equipment and just kind of your surroundings before you have to compete like in the big time.
Settling into Olympic Village, which that Olympic Village might, deserve its own episode. There's a lot of love apparently that's found there.
A lot of love.
One thing that was interesting that's different this trials than last trials, correct me if I'm wrong, is the CEO of USA Gymnastics did not participate in the team team selection.
Yes.
In previous years, I think he headed it, and now Miss Lely was outside of the closed door. So I think that's probably good to separate those two, but curious to hear any thoughts you have too.
I actually loved it. I don't think the CEO should have a say. It's kind of like the owner of an NFL team having a say in all of the decisions, which does that actually happen?
Yeah, for some teams.
But for gymnastics, it's such a subjective sport and there's so many different angles that go into it. I think for the CEO, especially the former CEO and this one, their job is to look at the gymnastics team as business and they're operating a business to hopefully the benefit of the athletes. And I think if they stay out of that very political decision, it gives them the best chance of actually making decisions for the betterment of the athletes.
And given the history of gymnastics, it's also probably better to distribute power
amongst as many people as possible.
Yeah, just to keep as much visibility on things as possible. Why do they, though, keep changing the number of girls on the Olympic gymnastics team?
I don't know, and I absolutely hate it. I think it is a decision that's made by the International Olympic Committee. I don't want to be fact checked on this because I'm pretty sure I'm wrong. But the last I was heard and told, the Olympics basically have a general capacity of how many athletes they can house. And with sports ever changing and evolving, coming in and out of the Olympics, they have to kind of like cut numbers from certain sports in order to distribute it amongst new ones.
I wonder if it has something to do with Title IX. But this year they had 4 team members, 4 alternates.
Yes.
And then 2 individual qualifiers.
You're going to quiz me on this?
Well, I'm curious, from a high level, what's the difference between making the USA Gymnastics team and going to the Olympics as an individual from the U.S.?
So from a very high level, I don't know the nuances of this, and I'm still learning. I've been talking to Nastia and NBC and trying to learn these new rules. But from a very high level, the 4 girls who are named to the actual USA team, when they go and compete in that team competition that everybody will watch on NBC, those are the only 4 girls who will get a medal.
If they win one.
Yes, if they win one, which they will. The 2 individuals who will still be wearing red, white, and blue, I don't know how that nuance works, if they're technically still representing the United States and if their medals count for the United States. But I do know that they will not receive a team medal.
My understanding is that if the individual, so gymnastics has the team event, the all-around event, and individual events.
Yes.
So if the USA individual wins a medal, then that would count towards the U.S. medal count, but it's freaking confusing.
Well, and let's go even more confusing for you guys. So there used to be, and I don't know where it stands, I'll give you an update. There used to be this rule where there's always a preliminary competition at the Olympics for gymnastics. It's not televised. It's not something you see. But anybody who qualifies to the Olympics goes to prelims and can compete on every single apparatus. At the end of that day, they rank every single athlete at the Olympics first to last. And the top 2 placers from each country can compete in the medal round of each apparatus. But hypothetically speaking, we take 4 girls. Those 4 girls come in first, second, third, and fourth. Our third and fourth place girls are not allowed to compete for a medal, even if they outplace other countries. So what I'm curious about is I think the individual spots override that. So if one of our individual girls comes in third or fourth, they'll still have the ability to compete for a medal.
And also, the interesting thing about the individual spot is Jade, who is one of the
Carrie,
USA,
yes.
she qualified as part of the team without actually being selected. It was based off her performance, which is different than the team selection.
Which I actually love because it takes a lot of the politics out of it. It takes out the subjectivity and allows her to technically, by difficulty and score, earn her place.
Yeah. Very interesting. And
Yes.
honestly, the gymnastics selection is always changing from Olympics to Olympics. Let's talk about coaching, because that's another unique thing about gymnastics. Every gymnast will bring their own coach. Does that mean that all the other coaches, like if I'm qualified and you're qualified, does your coach try to coach me and vice versa? Or like, how does that dynamic work?
So actually there's a lot of like mutual respect here. Every individual athlete has their own individual coach. And then there's one overseeing coordinator who kind of organizes everybody. So that new organizer, who used to be Marta Crowley, is now Tom Forrester. But for us, those lines were really never blurred. Whenever I would go into the gym, my coach, Coach Chow, was the only person who really had direct communication with me.
Interesting.
If Marta ever had any corrections or thoughts or opinions, she would talk to Chow, and Chow would talk to me, or choose not to, or vice versa, whatever.
Interesting.
But what actually gets interesting is you'll notice, if you watch the Olympics, a lot of times you'll see different coaches running in and out of the arena while their girls are actually competing. So only one coach is allowed on the floor at a time, and they're kind of like given a badge. And so if I'm getting ready to go up on beam, Chow will come running into the arena so he can coach me.
Jeez.
And then as soon as I'm done, he'll pass his badge off to like Nastia's dad or Alicia's coach. Or
It's interesting because the coaches, these athletes spend all of their training time. So for you is 6 days a week, 4 hours a day in Iowa. So 24 hours, like Chow was your coach.
Yes.
And then you would go do these kind of team events or training sessions. Chow would still go with you. And then he's there on the floor because he knows all your quirks, and he knows all, how to spot you and how to, it's just like a mental thing too, from my understanding.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's like important. It's not like baseball where you just switch coaches and it doesn't matter that much because they don't have that much of an impact.
I will say though, yes. But I will say there is one interesting aspect to where when you get to the final medal rounds, so primetime television that you would watch, that passing back and forth isn't technically allowed. You can only have one coach designated per event. And what's really cool is by the time you get to that level, that trust that you're talking about, those quirks, those everything, all of the coaches will actually come together and spend so much time focusing on every single athlete on the Olympic team to learn those quirks and to learn what they need to be comforted. And so Chow ended up being like the beam coach, where he catered to every athlete from the United States that competed on beam.
Wow.
And he would learn like when to wink at them, or when to like give them a nod, or when to extend a hand, or where to put chalk on the beam. But he would learn that for every athlete.
Yeah. And you'll see the coaches on bars like step in and kind of almost shadow guide the athlete, or on floor is the other time I can think of adding and removing a mat in the corner sometimes. On beam, they'll like add the what's about the springboard. The springboard.
Yeah.
So different things like that, but that's very interesting.
I will say that there is a definite mutual respect amongst the athletes and coaches, that I don't really think they ever try to overstep or cross boundaries or lines that way. They were all very they were all very supportive of their personal athletes and the other athletes competing.
Why are men's events in gymnastics so much different from women's?
I have no idea, but I think it might have to do with the structural build of a male versus a female. Because like I would never be able to do the rings. but a guy would have a very hard time doing the beam. So who knows? I think that's just how it was written back in the day.
I'm actually, hold on, I'm curious about this. So, this says that the routines try to feature different skills. So men's floor routines are more about flips. The gymnastics events for men are due to your point, to different structural differences. Men have better upper body strength. And I guess there's some gender norms splashed on there as well, where probably seeing a dude on a balance beam.
Yeah.
First of all, it makes me nervous to even think about.
Yeah.
But
I think too, it probably went back to ancient times when it was created, there was such this feminine movement of artistry with women's gymnastics, and there was such a strength component to men's gymnastics. So the events and their stylistic differences were designed based off of that in ancient times. And you're seeing that evolve with every Olympics now. I mean, perfect example is Simone Biles is, truly out competing men with her difficulty in her scores. And you're seeing that kind of overlap, which is really cool.
All right, you name the women's events, and I'll try to name the men's.
Vault, bars, beam, floor.
Easy. Okay, there's 6 men's.
Yes.
You got floor.
Yes.
Pommel horse.
Yes.
Rings.
Yes.
Bars. Did I say that?
What type of bars?
Parallel bars.
Parallel.
Parallel bars. But they also have bars.
No. They have...
What? Steel bars. What bars? High bars. And then they have vault too, yeah?
High bar.
High bar. Just one bar.
Yeah.
A bar.
A bar.
They freaking whip around on that thing.
Yeah,
too.
they do.
And vault.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the idea of gender norms in the sport. Do points in the movie Stick It? This happened. Do points really get deducted if your bra shows?
So within the code of points, which is kind of the rule book of gymnastics, yes, they can technically deduct if they don't like the aesthetic of a gymnast. So that means if they don't like your body style, if they don't like your garment, anything.
Interesting.
However, I will say that is evolving. There used to be rules back in the day where you couldn't wear colored nail polish. You couldn't have distracting, quote unquote, distracting makeup. You couldn't let tattoos show. You couldn't be individualized.
Based off your look?
Yeah, based off your look.
Interesting.
But now our sport is more and more celebrating that and letting that be the part of the artistry. So it's not as much an issue anymore.
Today's episode is brought to you by Zola. Zola. Ziola Zola. Babe, don't it feel like everyone's getting engaged?
They're either getting engaged or having babies.
Yeah, I feel like every time I get on Instagram, it seems like another friend has popped the question.
It's definitely engagement season, especially with everyone traveling this summer.
It's fun to see, though. And I'm curious if you have any advice for anyone that's wedding planning right now.
So I remember as soon as you popped the question, the first thing I did was buy a magazine that had a checklist in it for what I need to do for a wedding.
Would you do that again?
No, because in that checklist and throughout that magazine, I found Zola.com. It's literally a one-stop shop and has every checklist you could ever imagine. And it walks you through the entire wedding process.
I've even looked at the registry and they make it look like fun.
It is. That's one of the best parts for sure. You can fill it with gifts, cool experiences, or cash funds for anything like your honeymoon, and it's all in one place. I remember that was the most overwhelming thing was registering.
Yeah.
You would have to go to each store and register on each website. Here, it condenses it to one place.
They also give the option to convert any product that someone has quote unquote paid for into like a cash gift. I just like the versatility. And you can set up a free website to make it easy for your guests to find all of your wedding information and buy you all of the sweet stuff that you registered for.
Registering is so fun, and Zola makes it fun. So there is no reason to hesitate. See what all of those 5-star reviews are about. Go to zola.com/couplethings today.
And use promo code SAVE50, that's SAVE50, to get 50% off your Save the Dates. For peace of mind, you'll receive free change the dates with your purchase. That's zola.com/couplethings, promo code SAVE50. Today's episode is also brought to you by Care Of.
Babe, did you know that I love unique specialty things that are made just for me?
What are you talking about?
I love custom curated things that have been made just for me, like a special blend of coffee, a box of specialty wines that's been pieced together based on taste that I like.
Okay, all right, I'm catching on.
Which is just one more reason why I love Care Of. They make vitamins and nutrition fun for me. Their in-depth quiz helps them tailor a unique blend of vitamins catered to your specific needs.
And you can change up your subscription by retaking the quiz anytime your health or needs change.
Yes, and Care Of makes it so easy with a personalized subscription delivered straight to your door each month so that you never run out and you stay consistent with your routine.
And all of Care Of's products are formulated with good-for-you clean ingredients that are backed by science.
Find out for yourself why we love them so much. Today, Couple Things listeners can get 50% off.
50% off.
Your first Care Of order. Simply go to takecareof.com and enter code couplethings50. That's takecareof.com with the code couplethings50 for 50% off your first order from Care Of today.
We will also link that down below. And let's get back to it. Back to Olympic specific questions. When you were there, what were the media obligations like?
Media obligations, we really didn't have any media obligation until we were done competing. After you're done competing, you kind of go through the circuit. So you go through the NBC interviews, you talk to Bob Costas, you do like the international outlets, everything. And you usually do that within your arena. So whatever sport you're competing in, as soon as you're done competing, you'll go through almost like a corral. It's like a maze of every single outlet that has come to the Olympics. And you'll just do like step by step interviews until you get through them. I technically don't think you're obligated to do any of them. But I do think for the athletes, it's such a huge moment where they're wanting to share their story and their triumphs and tribulations and just kind of everything they went through to get there. So it's a pretty big honor for an athlete to do.
I wonder if there's anyone who's done the March on Lynch on this year so I don't get fined. I wonder if they do have a fine schedule in place for something like that. The NFL does.
I don't think so.
For the Olympics, they don't.
Yeah.
What does a typical day in the life look like for an athlete?
At the Olympics?
At the Olympics.
It's very different based off of sport, based off of country. Everything is kind of determined by team. For us, what it looked like, and for us, it was a little bit different because we were minors living in the Olympic Village. So
were you mining gold or silver? Or? That was the worst joke I might have ever made.
Yes, because we were underage, Andrew.
Okay, thank you.
And not mining gold. We were very restricted from our coaches just for safety measures.
Yeah.
So we pretty much stayed as a team, and we would stay in our room during downtime. We would go to practice. We would go to the cafeteria with our chaperones and with our coaches. We would go to the training hall where we would get like physical therapy done or go in the hot tub or the ice bath or whatever. And then they do have recreational activities at the Olympic Village. So they have like a barber shop, or they have a game zone, or they have like walking paths. It's truly like its own little community. We would go do that every once in a while, but again, under the supervision of adults.
It's interesting. Yeah, it does vary by sport. We talked about this in last year's video about the Olympics and how the pandemic affected it, but the structure of each sport federation and the Olympics
Yes.
can change from sport to sport. So the Olympics work, you have the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, and then each country has their respective Olympic committees. So for the United States, it's USOC. USOC kind of like manages, from my understanding, the sport committees. So for gymnastics, you have USA Gymnastics, but then USA Gymnastics is under the International Gymnastics Federation, which is called the FIG, and every sport has their own variation of that. So depending on the strictness or vibe of the coaches or the organizers,
I'm really proud of you for knowing all of that.
I don't know if I explained that well or not, but I gave it my best shot.
Here's the pyramid.
It's confusing. The NFL, you got freaking 32 teams
I know.
and one organizer.
So here's the pyramid, and you said it perfectly, just a little out of order. So you have the International Olympic Committee. They're the bigwigs.
Yeah.
They're the top of the top. Under them, you have the federations of every sport.
Okay.
So like the top of international sports.
Yep.
Under them, you have the countries' Olympic committees.
Okay.
So the Chinese Olympic Committee, the Russian Olympic Committee, the U.S. Olympic Committee. And under them, you have the organizations for every country, for every sport.
USAG.
USA Cycling,
Yeah.
USA Track and Field. And at each level, they can make their own rules.
That is very confusing.
Yes.
All right. We're going to skip the Olympic Village question because if people like this episode, we'll do a whole one on that. Cool.
Okay.
But we're curious. One listener asked if you get paid for your medals, or do you have to pay for your medals? Which is it?
Both, technically.
Interesting.
So whether you are, whether you are saving your eligibility for the NCAA, which congratulations is no longer an issue, and not accepting money at the Olympics, it's the one place where you can safely accept money, prize money of any kind, and not mess with your eligibility. But at the Olympics, gold, silver, and bronze medals come with prize money from the International Olympic Committee. So yes, you get paid for the medals, but then that actually counts as income. So you pay taxes on it.
Wow. And you had an Olympic ring that you had to pay for too, yeah?
Yes, there are Olympic rings that are issued by every country. And for us, we had to pay for them.
Getting to the country of hosting the Olympics,
yes.
This year it's in Tokyo, Japan. Who pays for the travel?
So a lot of this is specified and differentiated by federations, but for the United States, the U.S. Olympic Committee and each individual federation will pay for your travel. So USA Gymnastics and USOC paid for us.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Olympic sport to watch, babe?
I would say gymnastics, track and field, swimming, diving.
In that order?
Yeah.
Wow. And how many Olympics have you
attended?
Yes.
Whoa.
You've competed in one.
I've competed in 2008, but I've attended 2008, 2010, 2012, 2014, 2016. That's it.
Wow. It's pretty good.
5.
I think I've been to one. I've been to Atlanta. Let us know how many Olympics you've been to. Listening. What is your favorite? We'll wrap it up here with a couple questions.
Great.
And if people do like this episode on Olympics, we can do another one. But
I feel like there's so many topics that we could cover that we need to like categorize it.
Yeah. What is your favorite Olympic memory?
My favorite Olympic memory. I have, let me think. I have 2 that come to mind.
Okay.
The first one is during the all-around competition, I had put so much pressure on myself to win the all-around gold because it was kind of predicted that I was going to or supposed to, based off of my skill set and my scores. All social media, all media outlets were saying that that was the expectation from me for our country. And I remember going out there being really consumed by people's opinions and being weighed down by it. And by the time I got to the last event of that competition, because of scores, there wasn't a possible way for me to win gold by the last event. I knew my sport well enough and I knew the scores well enough that even if I had the most perfect routine, I still couldn't achieve that gold medal. And there was just this revelation that I kind of felt and realization that I felt in that moment that I was at the Olympic Games. I was competing on the biggest stage in the entire world. And I was at that moment doing it for someone else, for their expectations on me. And I just kind of felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulders because I felt like I had kind of failed already. Those expectations that people put on me, I had no other reason to finish the competition than for myself. And I remember looking at my coach and seeing my parents in the stands. I was just kind of like, you know what? F it. This is not for anybody else but for me. I have worked my whole life to be here. And in that one moment, I got to experience just true freedom of expectation. And I got to have fun as an athlete, which I hadn't had in a while. And it was the most liberating, freeing moment and feeling of my life. And I felt like that was the first time at the Olympics that I got to truly enjoy it. And I performed really well and I had a great time. Started bawling when I was done. My coach was bawling. My parents were bawling. And I just felt proud. I could have cared less what medal I got, what score I got. I just knew I did my best, which was awesome. The second moment was I distinctly remember being in our apartment in the Olympic Village, our gymnastics apartment, which was just us girls. And we were just talking teenage conversation because we're all 16, 17, 18 years old, talking about boys and our clothes and just really dumb stuff, eating gummy bears, sneaking Snickers, stuffing our face with candy and ice cream. And I just look back on that and we were such children enjoying the greatest moment and the greatest stage in the world. And it was really fun.
I don't want to downplay. I mean, it is a once in a lifetime, like incredible accomplishment. I've heard you tell that story a million times.
Yeah.
About the medals and you not being able to win the all around gold. But it's like, I just had this thought of it doesn't matter. It's not about the gold medal. It's not about making it to the Olympics. It's not about whatever the next accomplishment is for you or me or anybody. It's just literally about, I don't know. I don't mean to sound cheesy, but like who you are in that situation with whatever you're given. I don't know. The Olympics are epic. I freaking love watching them. And I love how people set world records there all the time. And it's like cool to see how far you could push humanity. But it's just, there's so many, I'm just thinking about the Way to Gold documentary about the mental health that comes with pushing yourself to push records like that. And it's like, dude, it's not,
I know.
There are more important things than the gold medal, than the Olympics and whatever accomplishment. So I don't know. Not to downplay it, but
yeah, I think we could do an entire conversation on that. But I think so many people, myself included, up until that moment, for me, a lot of people don't, have that realization.
Yeah.
But train their whole life to be an Olympic gold medalist, thinking that it's the end of the road. I never once looked past that gold medal, or I never planned out what the moment after would look like, what I would do with my life. And you see a lot of people break, like emotionally, physically. You see it in the documentary Weight of Gold, because you invest everything into a moment of praise and you never prepare of how to handle it afterwards. And I think when people put too much weight into that gold medal, Weight of Gold, they lose themselves. And when it was kind of taken from me, when I wasn't even capable of achieving it during that competition, I had to very quickly realize that like I still had purpose and I still had a life ahead of me. I don't know.
It seems like you might be fortunate as well that you went through this at such a young and already transformative age of 16, where like whatever, everything's changing at that point. It would be harder to come to that realization of what happens after I win the gold medal that I've been training my whole life for, when you're like 40 years old. You know what I'm saying? The older you get, the harder it is the heavier that weight is.
The more you've invested.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah.
And it's only magnified on that stage too, because for me, processing what came afterwards when I won the silver medal instead of the gold and the all around, having every media outlet, just hundreds back to back to back, to say, how does it feel to lose, to fail? What would you have done differently? What do you regret? What would you go back and change? All of these things. It solidifies in a lot of people that idea that they are only worth what their medal like symbolizes. And to see a silver medal at the Olympics as failure can mess a lot of people up. And for me, I had a very great community of people around me to remind me that no, that is an honor of a lifetime, but that can weigh on a lot of people.
You have any regrets from your Olympic experience?
I do not. I think you make a lot of mistakes. I think you go through a lot of different things in life, but I don't believe in regrets because I think they shape who you are as a person. As far as the Olympics, if I were to joke around with one, I wish I would have taken more pictures and saved those memories. I was so focused on the competition that I tried to blur everything out, and it's hard for me to remember.
I'm just going to publicly say this.
I wasn't even referencing that.
No, I freaking know, but it keeps me up at night. So when I think about it, Shawn, when we first started dating, this was the first year of our dating relationship. I needed a laptop for school, so she was generous enough to lend me her laptop. Turns out that was a laptop she had all her Olympic pictures on. The cloud didn't exist back then. So I lose the laptop and all of Shawn's Olympic pictures and memories along with it. Not all your memories, but the tangible freaking... I can't believe that. I am a knucklehead.
You know,
I'm sorry, dude. Gosh.
I don't think anything of it, baby. Yeah. It's totally fine.
Well, I think about it all the time. Anyway.
My memories with you and our daughter and our family are so much more important.
I'm thankful for you. Thanks for sharing. Those are good questions. We'll wrap that up there. Let us know if you want to have a part 2 to the Olympic conversations. This is different than our normal Cup of Things episode, yes. But I don't know. I think it's interesting for you and I to explore this as a couple because there's a lot of questions that, we haven't discussed. And then also each and every one of those things that we discussed, like Michaela Skinner. Michaela Skinner is married. Mm-hmm. And just like think about the impacts of if you were going through the Olympic journey right now, what would that look like? Or Chelsea Mimmel was trying to, like, she has kids and a husband. It's like, what does that look when you're trying to make the Olympics? What does that look like?
On a totally different level, only specific to this year, Michaela Skinner is a perfect example. There's an international ban on travel, so her husband can't go. Yeah,
it's crazy. It's a bump. Yeah. Well,
crazy.
Anyway, that's all we have. If you made it this far, please subscribe. Just hit the little subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening on and give it a rating. Let us know what you thought. Thanks for tuning in. That's all we have. I'm Andrew.
I'm Shawn.
We're the East Fam. Out.